We never time it in the first place, so I don't understand why we're
I
both here.
know there's a lot anyway. Anyway, who wants 3 minutes? 1, 2, 3, 4. 5 minutes. No,
Okay, so it's gone to 5 minutes again. The other ones, yeah, so obviously at the work by council for standard number 5C, which is about the holding of the meetings and the schedule set by council. All the other changes you suggested were minor things anyway, so it's also okay. Any other amendments?
right, so we're happy for this to go forward now? Yeah. Yeah. Right, financial regulations. Any questions? There's some questions coming. Everyone happy with the financial?
If no one else has got questions. Financial regulations 1.7.
Yep.
It increases the amount to 10,000. We have previously had 5K as the maximum amount from the full council, but even that was graduated for it. Why have we got now 10,000?
So that was a review of practices in councils of similar sizes, and that was the figure that most were in line with.
When we had the discussion and said the previous regime, it was so that no one was exposed, and we wanted to have a really kind of hard thing. So we'll come back to it. I've got other things. 5.6, I think it's 60,000, the same as you've already explained, Sean, where it talks about the contract system to exceed 60,000 open tenders. Is that how we?
Yes. Yep.
Thank you. 5.15. Individual purchases. This is what has changed from what we previously had, where we previously had that the maximum that the clerk could go up to was in fact 3.5, but then there was limits. It was this previous one. This is much higher than what we had in the previous ones, and I've just forgot to write them down so that I could talk through them. But it was, that's a concern because it's a change. And the next one is 9.1, which talks about a single card transaction can be £20,000.
That's the bank's limit. That's the bank's limit on a transaction.
But we can have something else because we had 2,000 before. Yeah. So when I set up commercial bank accounts, they say, what limit do you want to put on your account? But we can also have a policy that the bank might not do. At this point in time, I think 20,000 is a really big exposure of risk. It's pretty unusual. So that's 9.1. I'd like that to be reconsidered. And that's it.
Is that the bank account or the actual card?
The card, the debit card is limited to single transactions of £20,000.
Councillor Stanley.
If it was to pass this, would this mean that if the clerk used the delegate powers, when would be notified? Is it within weeks, months, of actually use that to do something emergency-wise? Because I'm concerned that the account committee is trying to do this, or it's not going to go through the committee to do it anyway.
So, in terms of the ordinary delegations, obviously that will be reported to the next available meeting. So the next, obviously, it'll either be the monthly council meeting or the appropriate committee meeting. It'll be reported to. Yeah. Now you need to see if you've got any more to propose a second changes to these.
Any changes?
No, I think it needs to be a lower amount than 20,000.
And what are you proposing a lower amount?
I think last year's 2,000 is
Okay, is there a second?
Sorry, no, I don't want to second that. I propose we trust our card and stick with what it says in the document.
Okay. Okay.
So sorry, so Julie, you're making a proposal for it to be 2,000, yeah? For
Yes.
debit card.
And second, proposal 5,000, to see inflation up a little bit, just to cover some of this, not to go to 5,000.
Okay, so we've got a proposal from Julie for 2,000, we've got a proposal from Peter for 5,000, we need to know if we've got a
Can
second
I
as
ask a
legal.
question, Roy? Can you tell us how many large transactions did you ever do, or what
On the
was
debit
like?
card, it would be very unlikely unless it was an emergency situation.
Right, so what's a comfortable one for you? I mean, that you wouldn't be coming back all the time?
Coming back for
Well, for extra approvals, I mean, what's at work?
How many transactions above £2,000 have you done in the last year?
very few.
You do some.
They're usually a couple of £100. I
No,
don't know
so
the
2,000.
transaction.
Would you have done transactions over 2,000 in the last year?
No, the most expensive ones are things like the car tax and the van tax that we buy, so they're what, 370, weren't they? Yeah, about that sort of value.
Okay, so we've got.
But they're not emergency
Right,
purchases.
we've got a proposal for 2,000.
Can I ask a question? I mean, if you spend on a debit card, it's also be controlled by all the other regulations that we've got.
Yes.
Yes.
This is just
Yeah.
a mechanism for spending the money,
Yeah.
not the control of how the money is spent. So the other regulations would still apply in terms of how people can take transactions forward. So this is purely the payment mechanism.
And in which case then we've got a draft and we need to say this needs to be read in conjunction with the section 515.
So we've got a proposal from Julie for 2,000, but I need to know if there's a seconder.
Is there a seconder for that?
Okay. And then there's a proposal for 5,000 from Councillor Stanhope. Whether there's a seconder. Okay. So if you take Julie's one first.
But there were also Kieran.
And then Kieran
And Kieran's, this is just keeping it as it
as
is.
retain as is. Okay, and does that have a seconder?
Yeah.
Seconded for that.
Okay.
Right, we'll go for,
So we do Julie's, then Peter's, and then Kieran's.
okay, Councillor Cook's proposal for 2,000. Favour? 1, 2, 3.
Okay.
And for Councillor Stanhope's
5,000.
5,000. And Councillor Berry's keeping it as the same. I think it's 5,000.
Yeah, 5,000. Okay. So that's just the number one. Now you need to, unless there's any other amendments to make the financial regulations, you need to approve these as a whole now.
Right, okay, to approve the financial regulations as a whole now. Yeah? Thank you. Right, 10.3, scheme of delegation. To review proposed scheme of delegation. Views on that? Councillor Cook. Yeah, no, so,
Yeah, no, sorry, thank you. First of all, just to, I agree with the up to 14 councillors for the planning committee. And we just encourage people when they nominate, not everyone has to be on the planning committee, but there is a lot of work on it. So if you're going to be on it, you've got to be there more often than not. Part one, and it's not the most exciting. 7.2. There's inconsistencies in what's written here and elsewhere about the constituency, but I suppose 7.2 facilities and then also for open spaces. I think the purpose of democracy is that every councillor has to decide how they represent their area and how they should contribute. So I think for the Facilities Committee and the Open Spaces Committee, that it should be like planning where we say up to 14, and then people here tonight decide how they feel that they should contribute to it, and that forms the committee, rather than us limiting participation and therefore limiting democracy in respect of that. There's some other bits and pieces, but I think that's a pretty chunky one. I think those 2 points perhaps need to be considered before we go through any other issues.
So you basically want to increase the membership of the 2 committees?
Facilities and open spaces in line with, how we say, planning up to
14 members.
yeah, and that means everyone could be involved, so they have to nominate tonight which ones they're going to be on, which we do later in the agenda, so that we have it known. So we can't have someone being accused of just turning up because there's something on the agenda. They're on the committee, their voting rights, we determine that tonight, but we don't arbitrarily set limits to those committees. We allow self-selection.
John was saying.
I just want to add, for the benefit of the new councillors, that this means that if you wish to have a say on any of the committees, you must commit yourself tonight, otherwise all you can do is attend, you can't vote. So it's actually quite important that you think about which committee you're going to be on and get on it today. Now the limit, there is a limit, a proposed limit on 2 of the committees, but only a small number of people from each of the parishes go on the committee. Julie's point is that everybody should be able to be on the committee. And if they do want to go on the committee, they have to say so tonight, otherwise they would not get a vote.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
Thank you, John.
Sorry then, Sarah.
Yeah, well, I just don't agree. So sorry? I don't agree. I mean, I think, you know, it will just become ungovernable, these committees full of, 14 councillors, I just don't think it works.
My concern over the last 4 years, we've had people not being turn up meetings, and it really is a struggle sometimes to get stuff done. We've had plannings, the council wants to record it, so we have more people will have more say than the whole village. I mean, I'm on visiting events, but I'm not open spaces. I've always been on open spaces. I've always been involved in both committees.
I was one from officers. If you can have up to 14 councillors on every committee, then you might as well just have full council meetings more regular and solve the issue that way. Council attendance in terms of in quorum, I'd just recommend councillors actually turn up and do their job of being a councillor. You haven't got an excuse really. The committees are currently restricted to 9 members, so you have currently got committee restrictions. So all this is doing is adjusting it by 2, and councillors don't have to stay on the same committee year after year, so that's what I'm going to say.
I'm actually what Sean said, I'm happy with that, have one big meeting, to get all meetings out of the way. So have like 3, or not the panel obviously, but the other ones, have one big meeting for 3 hours, once every 2 months.
You can abolish your committee.
What, just have one,
Just have anything that's planning if you want.
Excuse me, Chair.
No.
We actually closed out the south of the last vote, and we ran that originally, and then there was some more breakouts of bits and pieces. There were still originally some committees, but it was to have more, such as finance, for example, not as a separate committee, which it used to be, because all councillors should be across all things. There's a couple of things that becomes unworkable because of the quantum, planning being one of them, because they can take 2 hours a month just as a standalone item. So that probably needs to be by itself. Staffing, for other reasons, which I'll talk to, because I've got some points around that, for other reasons, probably needs to be there. And I think, yeah, we could equally have all of the items in one meeting, because sometimes the meetings are quite quick once we've got the discussions over and done with, so we can have open spaces, facilities, and full council all at once.
Councillor Berry.
I think we need to just understand why we have the separate committees. We have the separate committees to give focus. In the last 3 years, we've given good focus, for instance, to open space and highways, and because of that, we've achieved in open spaces and highways what we've achieved. We've had good focus in facilities and events, and because of that focus, that committee has achieved what it has achieved over time. If you put it into one meeting, frankly, the way these meetings go on, we just lose the will to live. And you will, I mean, can you imagine a 3-hour meeting? So the reason has been focus, and through that focus we have actually achieved things, and through having regular attendance and people keen on those particular subject areas, we have achieved, right? If you want to just kind of throw a bucket of cold water over that, then you follow a different route. And I would very, very strongly suggest that we keep the way we are, to keep focus and concentration on the direction that we need to give to our officers through a good debate on one particular area. And that's what we've done.
Okay, last question.
Thank you. Most of my meetings, facilities, last a maximum hour, I think. So the way these, like, 7 to 8 is facilities, 8 to 9 is open spaces. That's the done one evening. Something like we've done, I think 20 minutes for the cookies one.
Right, we've got a proposal where we keep it at what it is in the paper. Or we have it up to 14 members, which I think would be a bit too much, I think that would.
But people are not going to all say that they want to be on everything.
No.
It's just giving that scope.
No, so sort of scrap all the committees and just have one big meeting, I think you would lose the will to live.
Yeah, I agree. I think there'd be too many chefs doing something. It just
So I think just one.
For what it's worth, Kevin, I'm happy to go either way, but I do think one big meeting with everybody in it is probably a bit too much.
Yeah.
I would like to see 2 separate meetings as we've had in the past, but I'd like to see the number raised, not necessarily to 14, but not this divisional number of 3, 3 and 1. I would like it increased.
At the moment, it's 9 per committee, isn't it, on there too?
9 on track.
Right. Sorry.
I quite like what Clark's advising, purely for the fact that we've got equal number of people from the areas of the village. We could have, for instance, everybody from either on one committee, possibly only looking for after Ivor, and the same could be for IP. So I think the idea to have a set number of people from each area gives us better continuity and will serve the public better.
Right, I think we basically we've got basically a proposal to scrap the committees and just have one big meeting. We've got a proposal to keep it as is, and the other one is to increase the numbers. Is that what we got?
Yeah.
Right, okay, then shall we do...
Sorry, Chair, can you break down to not, say 40, they're going to 10?
I think if we do what Kevin's just said, the 3 things, he didn't specify a number. So we decide what the 3 directions we take, and then we can do a second
one that was up to 14, that's what I was basically.
I'm equally happy. Basically, I'm not happy with 7, and I'm not happy with people being told they can or can't be on it because of some thing. If that was to be lessened by having I think we used to have 11. Last year went 9.
Me personally, I think why don't we just give this a try? Basically how it's set out now, it's sort of set up between making sure that the villages are, numbers and
It's divisionary.
Why don't we just give it a try?
It's divisionary, Kevin. The numbers are divisionary.
Okay.
You've got 3, 3 and 1, which means one ward is not even represented at one or other of the meetings. And the point about whether it's 7, 9 or 14 doesn't really matter. It's a question of how many people put their hands up here. And having a target, a potential target of 14 is actually a dissuasion to vote for that particular option. I would say the number almost needs to be decided before the vote. I'm happy with 9 as in planning. And I'm happy with a free vote that anybody who wants to go on any committee can go on any committee. I don't like the idea of one big one. I like the idea of the committees as we have them now. I just think the numbering and where they come from is wrong. It's divisionary.
Okay, you got proposal either to keep it the same, and we just basically, we have up to 14 in all of them, or we keep it, scrap the committees. Right, well, on the first one, as in, we'll go up to the numbers, basically, same as planning, up to 14 members. Who wants to propose that? So you propose that, Jude? Anyone second that? Stan, yeah, seconds that. So you go to that first.
Candle, or you can invite proposals.
Okay. The other proposal is scrap both the committees and just have one big massive meeting. Anyone want to propose that? I think that was all.
Propose that, so I've got the idea of sort of propose it.
Does anyone want to propose that? Because I heard it mentioned. Right, there's no proposal for that.
Yeah.
And we're basically keeping it
And then keeping it as per.
keeping it as per paper.
Yeah, just so.
You prepare.
That's the
Yeah.
idea.
And you second that? Thank you.
So just repeat the first proposal again.
So the first proposal is to have up to 14 councillors on each committee. The second proposal is to go as per the recommendations of the paper.
Do the first one, who put hands up to wants to go up to 14 members on both committees? Against?
Again.
Okay. Four people didn't vote there. Unless I'm miscounting. It's four people abstaining.
I abstain.
Okay. So that's a tie, so it's up to you to decide.
And that's one,
That's up to 14
up to
councillors.
14 councillors.
So you either vote in favour of that or against.
But we didn't vote for the new one.
No,
Yeah, you need to determine whether
We've
this
got to
one's
determine
still
this one.
first.
We've got to determine this one, so
I thought we'd be determining the 14
Yes.
or what he said. So it's either hands up for 14 or hands up for the as is.
It was up to 14, not 14.
up to 14.
Sorry, I misunderstood that, I thought it was
Right, do you
14.
want to vote
Again.
again?
No, then I would vote for that,
Right.
The two committees up to 14.
Yeah,
yeah,
okay.
give me,
Votes in favour of that.
so you clarified that.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
Yep.
Well, that's carried on.
Yeah, so you can start with against those.
Right.
So I've got seven in favour,
Right, okay,
against up to 14.
yeah, against up to 14. 1, 2, 3, 4,
I'm abstaining.
5.
I'm abstaining. I don't know.
Okay, so we've got up to 14 councillors on up to 14.
Can I just transfer
So is everybody on every committee?
I've mentioned that before in the call.
So they're just sorting out.
So all of the terms of reference need to adjust to say up to 14. So from 11, that's, so 11, those two need to be adjusted, the terms of reference up to 14.
Excuse me, Chair, I'm sorry to read the document.
We've just
finishing off the vote, making sure that the changes are made on the committees.
Yep, okay, so Julie, what is the real
I'm up to 7.4, what is currently called the Personnel Committee. After 40 years in human resources, I hate the word personnel because it's been 40 years since it's used. I'm not in love with staffing committee, but it's slightly better. And I'm urged us to move away from that. But there's two more significant changes. One is it specifies membership by position held, and I think that's once again inappropriate. I think that it should be search your heart, do you have something to offer a committee that looks at these issues as per the scope. The frequency of meetings, which says meet at least twice per annum, and one of the significant responsibilities is around the appraisal process. Once again, twice would not actually support an appraisal process, and I would suggest a quarterly approach, and we may even need to consider, it talks about once a year appraisal, that is also as old as the dragons as an approach is concerned. So I would like to see some change in respect of the name, the frequency, and not be position orientated.
So you want to amend this, it's a staffing committee. What, in terms of membership, how many members do you want?
I'd like to have a discussion. I do see a lot of merit of not having a large number. The major reason here is it's about administration, it's not about a democracy piece. But if you have a dispute, the people from the staffing committee first of all view that dispute. And then if it goes to appeal, you need fresh eyes. So you need councillors who have not been on staffing committee to then come in and do the appeal process. So some people have to be quarantined from the discussions, if you like, to be those fresh eyes. 5, 7 maximum.
What you mean, you basically mean if there is a problem, then I think it happened a few years ago when...
Yeah, and we had to go through, and we had to pull in people outside the staffing committee. So you can't have everybody. I would say 5 is fine, 7 is absolute maximum for that fresh eyes approach.
But they can be drawn in at a full council meeting, which is how it's done.
Well, that's what you have to do. If you then go into that process, you then ask the volunteers to do that appeal process. Yeah.
What's the difference between that committee and the others? Just make it 14 so we can...
No, it's just...
I thought it was agree that everybody was on everything.
Why not? Everyone's...
I think a lot of...
There's too much secret society going on with that committee.
Well,
We should all have at least the opportunity to vote on anything that goes in.
So yeah, if there's a major staffing matter, then it would be coming to full council anyway. It wouldn't go to staffing committee.
But who would decide that? Would that be yourself or the committee?
It depends what the issue, like what that situation was, as to whether it's something that I would be referring to council, or whether the staffing committee would be referring it on to full
I
council.
just don't see what is the difference between the staffing committee and the other committee.
It's more confidential, isn't it?
Why?
It is.
We don't gossip about certain meetings, do we?
But meetings generally are in
This is
public,
public,
unless
and stuff, some of the staffing stuff.
most staffing stuff is going to be very personal, so it's all going to be outside of a reserved meeting.
So therefore